Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this Thursday evening. We're going to get started now. Welcome to today's Community Leadership Series session in partnership with Groundup Central Connection. Today's topic is about navigating the how-tos in volunteer engagement. So I'm Grace. I will be your host and moderator and also breakout room facilitator for one group tonight. We have an exciting night ahead of us. We have over 100 participants. We have 22 breakout rooms, which is a lot of breakout rooms. So a big shout out to my amazing colleague, Jinging, who's going to be putting all 100 plus of you into breakout rooms in the next few minutes while we start the panel discussion. This is the overview of tonight's program, so you know what you're getting yourself into and can prepare yourself for the night ahead. So right now we're just going to do some introductions, and then we're going to dive right into the panel discussion with our three awesome panelists who will introduce themselves in a while. Then we're going to have the Q&A section. So there'll be two parts. There'll be a structured Q&A and then an open Q&A. So during that time, please feel free to ask your questions in the chat. But in the meantime, please do introduce yourself in the chat if you haven't already done that. Let us know yourself, where you're from, what you're looking forward to learning about today, so that our speakers also have a better understanding of like where you're from, and also so that you can get to know other people at the session today. We have a huge range of participants, from corporates, from non-profit organizations, from ground-out groups, to schools, just all sorts of institutions and educations from different sectors. So really excited about tonight's session. After the main room discussion and the panel discussion, we'll be going into the breakout rooms. And in this breakout rooms will be the time for you to kind of digest all that you've heard during the panel discussion, and an opportunity for you to network and meet other participants in this session. But also if in the chat, you see someone who introduces themselves who is like doing something really cool, or maybe someone that you could see an opportunity to collaborate or partner with, feel free to, I guess, direct message them in the chat. If you don't want to entertain them, I guess you can also not respond to them, just privacy and trust and safety. But we hope that this evening will just be a wonderful night of networking with people from different sectors who also care about improving the volunteer experiences in their own organizations, as well as learning from our speakers tonight. And we're all here to learn from one another. So I hope that you'll be able to take away something meaningful from tonight's conversation and something that you can apply into your own context moving forward. After the breakout rooms, we'll come back into the main room for some closing announcements and wrap-ups. And then hopefully we'll be out of here by 9 o'clock sharp. Yeah. So what's tonight all about? It's really just about learning from one another. And specifically, we're going to be looking at volunteer engagement, how we can better engage our volunteers, how we can manage disengaged and active volunteers, and how we can improve the experiences of our volunteer processes. And this event is really for you, the people listening in, the people who have registered for this event, to learn and reflect on your own experiences. And hopefully you'll be able to take away things that you can apply into your own context as you hear from the stories of other people. Yeah, so we're gonna dive right into the panel discussion. Tonight we have three really awesome panelists. I've met them all before, I've interviewed them all before, so I know that they have such incredible stories and reflections to share tonight. So without further ado, I'll hand the time over to Megan, who will introduce herself, her role, and actually what she does in her own community at Prudential Singapore as the head of community investment and partnerships. So over to you, Megan.
Thank you, Grace. Hi, everyone. Very nice to meet everybody here. And thank you to NVPC for having me. My name is Megan. I head up the community investment team at Prudential. We have a vibrant volunteering community at Prudential where we do programs in health and financial literacy, and all these programs are really carried by our volunteers. So I'm looking forward to bringing a corporate volunteering perspective to this session today, sharing with you my experiences of running the practice, and of course, learning from you all as well. So yeah, back to you, Grace.
Thanks, Megan. Next up, we have Victor.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Victor. I'm from Touch Community Services. I've been serving in the sector for about 18 years, and I'm very thankful for this opportunity, to share my learnings. Actually, I learned quite a lot in the past from mentors from other organizations who are into volunteer management. So I hope that tonight I can share with all of you what I have learned, and at the same time I can also learn from every one of you as well. I'm also NCSS Volunteer Management Champions, where through the programs I also mentor new volunteer managers who join the sector, I really enjoy that, imparting my experience to them, and also learning from them, especially someone who is new to the sector. All right, thank you. That's all for my introductions. Over to Ethan.
Thank you, Victor. Hi, everyone. Thank you, the NVPC team, for having me here. My name is Terng, so I'm the founder of YouthHarmony. We are a registered charity where we run a lot of music events, for example, masterclasses, performances, mentorship programs, taster programs, etc. And we are also fully volunteer run by youth. So I hope that the engagement tips that I've learned over the past 1.5 years would be able to value add to the audience here as well. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks, Ethan. So yeah, we have a really our panelists tonight come from very different backgrounds. So Megan comes from a corporate setting, and she'll be sharing about her experiences. Creating and structuring volunteering programs for staff volunteers, as well as their family members. Victor comes from a non-profit context, and Ethan comes from a Groundup organization, which recently registered as a non-profit organization. So tonight you'll be able to hear from different contexts, and hopefully you'll be able to find some resonance as a participant tonight into your own context. There's definitely principles that we hope you'll be able to apply from across the different sectors or the different contexts, and that's what we really hope that you'll be able to get away from this evening's session. There'll be two parts of this panel discussion. So there'll be the structured Q&A and an open Q&A. So in this first segment of the structured Q&A, it will really just be a conversation between myself, Ethan, Victor, and Megan, as we discuss topics related to volunteer engagement. How do we define that? What are some of the policies that they've implemented in their own organization, and some tips for us? Then the next section we'll be moving on to is about tackling disengaged and inactive volunteers. And the third section of the structured Q&A will be about assessing and reviewing our volunteer engagement. Afterwards, we'll be moving back into the open Q&A section. So at any point in time during the Q&A or this discussion, feel free to ask your questions in the chat. If there's a specific question you would like to direct to someone, for example, someone said something that you would like further elaboration about or a clarification, feel free to directly ask that in the chat. So you can just be like, at Ethan, just now you mentioned this thing, could you elaborate on whatever thing? Or if you have a question just for all the panelists, and there's no one in particular, you just feel free to say at all panelists, how would you handle this situation if it happened in your context? I mean, all sorts of questions under the sun. Hopefully, you'll learn a thing or two from tonight's conversation. So I'm going to move on. Oh, okay, wait. See? Then let's just begin. So the first question will go to Ethan, and the question is about volunteer engagement. Right? What does volunteer engagement mean to you?
Thank you, Grace. I think for me, volunteer engagement, I like to look at it from a perspective and a viewpoint of an end-to-end experience for our volunteers. So even from before they join and even until after they have left the organization. So I make it a point to care for every touch point that is present, to make sure that their volunteers are heard, they feel respected, they feel valued, from even the recruitment stage all the way until the engagement stage. And even when they leave, we want to keep them as our alumni, and also keep in touch with them as well. Yeah, so for example, during recruitment, we want to reach out to them, we want to be polite, we want to be respectful, we want to be intentional in our communications. And during their time here, we try to engage them with various activities, networking sessions, etc., for them to meet other volunteers. And how we structure and curate these so-called programs and activities that engage volunteers is to really look at it from a perspective of serving them. How can we value add to them as well? Because they are spending their time, spending their effort to volunteer with us to help contribute to the organization. So we really want to look at how we can give them opportunities to develop and to be exposed to other stuff, as well as to build up their technical and soft skills on top of, since most of our volunteers are youth, also on top of VIA hours as well.
Thanks, Ethan. Victor, what about you? How is volunteer engagement done in your community?
Hi, thanks. Okay, so over at Touch Community Services, I'm very thankful that I have a team of colleagues who are helping me because we have 22 centers island-wide. So we actually have a volunteer management policies where we state out the guidelines and engagement so that as a whole, we are able to manage the volunteer better. Yeah, so in short, I actually summarize it to 4R so that it's easy to remember. So the 4Rs is recruit, review, retain, and recognize volunteers. And we also discover that sometimes when the volunteer join us through any of our services, they may not know what the whole organization is actually doing. So recently we have also standardized our orientation slides where the first few slides will introduce touch as a whole, and then they can go to their program specific or service specific depending on how the volunteers sign up for the programs. Yeah, so at the same time, we also do an annual survey, meaning that we'll gather feedback from the volunteers, and from there we will also review our processes or areas where we can improve so that we may better equip our volunteers. Yeah, so in a nutshell, I believe that volunteer management is also pretty much about your relationship with the volunteers. We have also seen that when a colleague left, some volunteers may take a break so this is the part that we are now trying to manage so that when a colleague changed portfolio or they left the organizations, we will look into that transitions so as to better manage the volunteer experience with Touch. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Victor. Megan, what about you? What makes for good volunteer engagement? And how is that done in your organization?
I think I'm fortunate to be part of an organization where volunteering is part of our culture. And I think that's the first point that I want to make today is, when you just take a step back before getting into planning a volunteer engagement, it's about what kind of atmosphere are you creating for your employees, right? So creating that culture where your leaders who are right at the top endorse volunteering is first and foremost so important because they set the tone for the organization. They send a signal out that, volunteering is something that everybody and anybody needs to do. And they sort of, champion and endorse it. I would say that I think the next part is once you've created this culture, it's about institutionalizing, right? What kind of policies that can we introduce that encourage more and more employees to take up volunteering? One policy that we have is, we give every employee, and we have over 1,200 employees at Prudential Singapore, we give every employee 5 days of volunteering leave. This is about their annual leave, about their, their compassionate leave, their family leave. And this allotment basically encourages them to go out and pursue their own causes that they personally resonate with. And when it comes to official causes of the company, when we conduct our volunteering programs, we actually do them during the business day. Now, because your leadership and your managers have endorsed this culture of volunteering, they are very encouraging when an employee puts his or her hand up and says, hey, I want to take the afternoon off to do good, right? So I would say creating the culture, then institutionalizing it by creating, putting the right policies in place. And then the third part would be is to keep up the momentum. So something that we do is right from when an employee walks through our doors, when they go through their orientation, they're already sitting in for a volunteering session. So that's how they start their journey with us, by getting introduced to our community engagement initiatives. And after that, it just continues. We have volunteering events happening every other week through the year. And so these employees, the new joiners, the employees who have been there with us for many years, they just keep coming back. And then I love what Victor said, the 3 R's, recruit, retain, recognize, right? So you recruit your new volunteers, at the start of their journey, you retain them, and then you recognize them. And so we have these different strategies, which I'd love to share more later, on how we recognize our employees and really celebrate them for what they do.
Thanks, Megan. Sorry, there's actually 4 R's. I missed out one when I was typing notes. It's recruit, review, retain, and recognize. But we'll go a bit deeper into the review section at the end in the last segment.
Sure.
Yi-Tang, anything else to add to the conversation so far?
Yeah, I think recognize the out of the 4 R's for us, YouthHarmony, and for I think Groundups most importantly when we are run by volunteers. I think recognizing is very important and something that we might tend to overlook at the start. Yeah, so actually at YouthHarmony we also focus a lot on recognition and appreciation. So it can come in the form of either care packages if we have the budget to do so, or even as simple as making sure that their efforts are recognized, publicized, and that they can use it for their future endeavors, either as portfolio or as like a way that they can show that, hey, look, I did something. This is what I have done to contribute to the community, and other forms of appreciation like that as well. Yeah, so that is something that I really resonated that the other two speakers have shared as well.
Thanks, Yitang. Victor, this question is for you. Like, what are some factors that result in low volunteer engagement? Like, what keeps volunteers from being more engaged?
Okay, so I guess what keeps okay, so maybe I will just share there are actually two things lah. Okay, the first is actually when they come on board to volunteer, I think it is important that we engage the volunteer meaningfully. And actually during the orientation, sometimes we will also ask them, what is the role that they prefer, even though when they sign up, they might not know that much about the role they are signing up for. But eventually, when we explain to them, usually they will adopt the role, and then they will be able to engage our beneficiaries. Of course, there will be instances where, because we are a multi-service organization, so if they are volunteering for our special needs group, right? So when they handle non-verbal clients, that is the part where sometimes they may feel that they are being disengaged. Reason being that the client may not respond to them as what they have expected. Yeah, so this is the part where we need to manage. Of course, there is another group that is the inactive, meaning that once they sign up with you and then subsequently, because of their work engagement or their availability has changed, so they are unable to volunteer with you. So we classify them as inactive. However, because now we have the PDPA policy in place, so we will inform them whether they want to still stay connected with us. If they give us the permission, so on a quarterly basis, we may update them about the volunteering opportunity so that when they are available, they may come back and volunteer with us again. So these are the things that we put in place. Of course, we also have colleagues who have built their own network of support, meaning that when some volunteers are unable to join our programs and they got to pull out, this is where my colleagues will activate this group of volunteers who are actually on standby to support the services that we have. Yeah.
I think you really emphasize like the role of the volunteer coordinator, right? And that relationship that the volunteer coordinator has with the group of volunteers.
Yeah, I think the relationship between them is also very, very important. I think sometimes simple thing like asking them, have you taken your meals, etc., may means a lot to them, where they feel that they are being cared for. Yeah, so I guess the whole volunteering experience, it is also not just about the clients, but also the staff who are managing them. In fact, we are also looking at how to equip our colleagues to actually appreciate the volunteers. Yeah, so I think previously I may not have shared this. So we actually use the acronym GLAD, G-L-A-D. So you greet the volunteer, you lead by giving instructions so that they know what to do. And after they are finished, you actually appreciate them. That is the A. And then D, if there's any feedback, you can direct them to the volunteer management department so that we may review our processes or provide supports that the volunteer needs. Yeah, so this GLAD actually, very interestingly, was introduced by one of my colleagues as well. It is from a brand of a clean red. Yeah, so it also means that we want to keep the relationship fresh. Yeah, so that's what we did over at Touch. Yeah, thanks.
Nice, thanks, Victor. Yitang, what about you? Like, what are some things that keep volunteers from being more engaged in your experience?
I think over the past 1.5 years, there are two factors that stand out to me. I mean, Victor gave a lot already, so I'll try to not repeat the same things again. First factor I think is their leader. So because we're all run by volunteers, right? Even the respective team leaders are also volunteers. And I think, of course, the organization has the responsibility to come up with initiatives and activities, processes to help keep volunteers engaged. But I think even if they are engaged, if the leader himself doesn't make an effort to engage their volunteers and doesn't bond with them, like what Victor mentioned, asking them if they've eaten, getting to know them on a more friend basis, especially as we're all around the same age. Yeah, and then that will end up with the volunteer drifting away. They'll feel like, oh, why am I here? I don't feel like part of something. And even though the organization does stuff, it's like, okay, like I don't even know my own leader. Why would I listen to him and stuff like that? Yeah, so I think that is a very important factor. Second factor would be regularity, consistency. For me, I believe that volunteer engagement is something that's very constant. It should be regular. It shouldn't be once a year, twice a year kind of thing. So what we do is we do, for example, quarterly town halls. Then in between, we also have small bonding events here and there where teams can either go out with one another or they mixed around as well. And also those hold various smaller scale events, like networking sessions, game nights, stuff like that, where it's more like an open chill concept, where we really invite our volunteers, hey, come, you're free, come and join us, go and meet your other volunteers, meet your leader. Best is you can meet them physically, of course. Yeah, so I think these are two very important factors that play a very key part in volunteer engagement.
Thanks, Yitang. Megan, what about in your organization? What are some factors that you've identified that result in low volunteer engagement?
Now, I completely agree with the points Victor and Terng made, especially on Terng's point around leadership. And I think I alluded to that right at the start on how important it is to have a leader who endorses volunteering and community work. But I think something else that I can add from a corporate volunteering perspective and a slightly more empathetic perspective is that maybe we should invest more time in understanding why a volunteer is disengaged. Now, if I were to look at my volunteers who are employees and agents who are juggling very hectic careers, they're pressed for time, they're trying to manage different work commitments, family commitments, you really get the sense that it's not a lack of intent, but it's really the lack of time. So there is that desire to want to do good, but maybe, it's a question of scheduling. Sometimes, we think it's a big problem, but when you really drill down to it, you realize that there are pretty simple fixes to that. So, earlier I talked about how we encourage volunteering during the business day so that people don't have to take out their family time on the weekends to do volunteering, right? But when we started speaking to a few colleagues, we found that there was a subset who actually preferred to volunteer on Saturdays, a subset from, the big group. So what can we do for this subset? We started opening up slots on Saturdays. And these guys now feel like, okay, they wanted to do good. They can't do it Monday to Friday, but here now the organization is giving them that opportunity to do it on a Saturday, right? Then there could be, there are other teams where we approach this from an employee engagement angle. So we say that volunteering has a lot of benefits, not just for the beneficiary, but for yourself, right? To improve your own personal well-being. So we look at it from an employee engagement lens, from a team bonding lens, and we plan these interventions much in advance. Sometimes we're talking months in advance, right? To have an entire department come together. So there are ways to tackle disengaged volunteers. I think the point is to remember that not all volunteers are disengaged because they don't want to do good, right? So it's about understanding the problem and then removing the roadblocks to make it easier for somebody to volunteer, remove the barriers.
Yeah. Thanks, Megan. I love that last line, understanding the problem and removing the roadblocks and barriers. So, how then do you, I guess that kind of addresses the point about like the strategies then you use to keep volunteers engaged, right? Do you have any specific examples of how within your organization you've done that?
Yeah, first of all, we celebrate all our volunteers, whether they, as much as we love to have volunteers who show up regularly. sometimes even if they show up once in a couple of months or even once in a year, we celebrate them and we recognize their efforts. So I think, recognition, and we've talked about it, a fair bit in this conversation, is important. I think then there are other little things that we do, like we've sort of branded our entire corporate volunteering program. It's called #DoGood. In fact, I showed up here in my Do Good t-shirt. I don't know if everybody can see it. I have my Do Good wallpaper behind me. So it's really about giving, a face and a personality to this program, right? So that people feel that they are part of a movement, that they are part of a cause. There's a shared identity. Some other strategies are, I would say, trying to identify who are your most seasoned volunteers, and then using them to be voices for yourself or for your team. So at Prudential, we just launched something called the CI Champions, the Community Investment Champions. They're a group of 20-something employees who are seasoned volunteers, and their role is to rally other colleagues in the organization and get them to do good, right? So this is just another way we another strategy we have towards improving volunteerism.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Megan. Now we're going to move on to the second segment, which is about tackling disengaged and inactive volunteers. I think we've alluded to a number of these things earlier on in the initial conversation. At this point in time, also, if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat. You can add a specific speaker if there's something you want to ask. I'm also kind of doing a live transcription thing. So if you miss something out, you can also reference the chat to see what we're talking about. Yeah. So before we go into actually how do we engage or disengage or inactive volunteers, I think we can just start with definitions, right? Victor, how you define what is the difference between a disengaged and an inactive volunteer?
Okay, so I think I probably mentioned it earlier. So the disengaged part is more on during the activities where the volunteers' experience may not be what he expected. Like earlier on, I cited the example of clients with special needs. So that is the part where sometimes if you have seasoned volunteer or a volunteer leader, you can actually pair them with someone who is new, so that you may mitigate that issue rising where the volunteer may feel that they are being disengaged. So for the inactive one, usually those who stop volunteering for a while, especially those on ad hoc basis, or they only volunteers for events based. So we all know that during the COVID, we can't have physical activity. So, but then there are some activities they do allow people to go out and serve the community, like for example, the meals delivery. So we are very thankful that we observed that some of the inactive volunteers actually responded to our call. As I mentioned, those inactive ones, usually for those who are more closer to us, they will inform us that, for the next 3 months, 6 months or so, they won't be able to volunteer due to their work commitment, or maybe there are some situation at home that doesn't allow them to have the time to volunteer. But the important thing is that for those inactive volunteers, they must give us that permissions to continue to connect with them, so that we may inform them about the upcoming volunteering activities. Yeah. So I guess it is also important to equip my colleague especially sometimes their priority may be the clients, and they've forgotten about that there's also other stakeholders like the volunteers or even the corporate partners. Yeah, so this is the part where now we are doing our best to strengthen that engagement, not just with the individual volunteers, but also with the corporate partners. Thanks.
Thanks, Victor. Terng, it's curious to hear your thoughts also about defining unengaged or inactive volunteers.
I think for me,
how do you tell?
yeah, actually, I think for me, I'll start with inactive volunteers because that's I think a bit easier. So for us, because we are mostly virtual, I think about 95-99% virtual, it's quite easy to tell when someone's inactive because they'll start disappearing. you don't get replies, or for example, they just suddenly poof into thin air. Yeah, so that's when we realize that, hey, this volunteer might be inactive, they're gone now. Well, they're not actively or engaged anymore. But if we're talking about unengaged volunteers, I think this is where proactiveness is a very big indicator, especially in YouthHarmony, where we start to notice that, when volunteers come in, they're very excited, right? They're quite eager to help. They like to be very engaged. They're very in Singaporean slang, they're very ons lah. Yeah. But then when they start to feel disengaged, there will be that shift there that we can notice where they feel like, there's no point doing it or stuff like that. And then they tend to, but they still do work, right? When you give them tasks and stuff, they still do it, but it might seem a bit, like, okay, do and get rid of it, just to clear the backlog and stuff like that. Yeah, so I think proactiveness for us is a very big factor to determine whether a volunteer is engaged or unengaged. And of course, inactive is when they completely disappear, don't reply, and just ghost, etc. Yeah.
I think it also depends also on like the context, right, and the specific volunteer role that they have. I think in the context of YouthHarmony, where it's a youth-led, and largely everyone's a volunteer, so there's a lot more ownership. And if someone initially joins in and they're very proactive, the shift is more noticeable, as opposed to if I suppose the volunteers are people who sign up just to fulfill a certain task or just have like a certain role to fulfill, for like a predefined scope.
Right, definitely, yeah.
Megan, how do you tackle disengaged volunteers?
I think something that I can add on, I mean, I completely agree again with what the other panelists are saying, but something to add on is maybe asking the question of, is this volunteer the right fit for the activity? Is there an issue of fit here, which is leading to his or her being disengaged, right? Sometimes there are some activities that require more commitment than others. And then maybe the volunteer signed up for it, underestimating the demands of the job, especially in my corporate context where they are already juggling a lot of commitments. So finding the right volunteer for the right intervention, the right beneficiary is important. Yeah.
Thanks, Megan. So I mean, then how do you tackle such a situation? Like, if that happens?
I think then again, I think it also goes back to the point that I made earlier about not spending enough time in really understanding the profile of your volunteer. So when you go back to the drawing board and you sit down with a volunteer and you really try to understand what are their expectations from the volunteering activity, what do they want to gain out of it, why are they doing it, and then trying to come up with the best match for the best role for them, the best program for them to be a part of, you will see that change in behavior. Lots of times, we end up, we end up becoming disengaged when we sign up for something and then realize that the experience does not compare with the expectation. So getting that alignment between expectation and experience at the outset and then reviewing it periodically, is so important. When it comes to the case of completely inactive volunteers, again, that's a bigger problem, but again, quite, similar to disengaged volunteers. And again, it's about, and this is where factors like having a supportive culture, right? The point that I made at the very beginning, having supportive managers and leaders who walk the talk, who are ambassadors and champions for community work, really plays a part, because we learn from our surroundings, we learn from the people who lead us, we learn from our peers. And so when you are part of an environment that really promotes this culture of doing good, then the optimistic me finds it hard to believe that somebody will still stay inactive or disengaged for very long.
I love what you said earlier about really considering the match. I mean, it really does sound like designing volunteer experiences or volunteer engagement experiences is also about being a matchmaker, right? So I guess if we're like trying to define the JD volunteer experience, it's being a matchmaker. That's one of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Terng, how do you, actually this question is for Victor. How do you handle volunteers who are flaky? So, they say that they're going to show up, but then they don't show up.
Okay, so over at our end, we must always prepare for this, because especially during this this pandemic, even though that, the social, the SML has been eased, but then we also know that the COVID cases are rising. So definitely we must always be prepared for volunteers who may fall out for whatever reason. So we are very thankful that there are a group of volunteers who stay around our center. So these are the volunteers where my colleagues had a friendship with them over the years. Yeah, so they do not mind being on standby, meaning that as and when we need them, we will activate them so that they will come and help us in the areas of our needs. Of course, the more challenging ones are those who sign up for meals delivery. Yeah, so sometimes due to certain probably work commitments or emergency, they may not be able to come. So that is the part where no choice, then the staff will have to stand in for them. Otherwise, most of the time, we are very thankful for those volunteers who inform us in advance. I think at least 3-4 hours in advance is good enough for us to mobilize other volunteers to help. Yeah. So for those who didn't show up, the first time we will give chance. Second, we will start to take notice. The third time we will check in with them whether they are really serious about this, and we also explain to them if they don't turn up, what will happen. Yeah. So like for example, especially for the meals delivery, if they do not turn up and we could not find people, so sometimes the meal may be delivered late to the seniors. So these are the things we will explain to them, and hopefully next time when they sign up, these things won't happen. But of course, we also take note of those who are frequent no-show. Then we will stand by people just in case they didn't turn up. We can activate people.
Thanks, Victor. Itang, and how do you handle inactive volunteers?
Okay, so when a volunteer is gone for a long time and has no contacts, labeled inactive, right? When we realize this, first thing we do is that we try to give a second chance, most importantly, because volunteers are still people. They're here on their own free time, and at YouthHarmony, because we're all youths, right? We have youths for currently in school, currently taking A-levels, currently in uni, currently working, etc. So it's not very easy for them to take out time in their week, in their day to volunteer. So we want to be understanding. We want to understand, the reasons why they are inactive as well, because I believe there's always a reason for everything. And actually, that's when we start asking questions. If we're able to contact them again, we ask them certain questions like, is it because of the way we are structured? Is it because of their workload? Is it because of commitments outside? And like Megan mentioned earlier, actually expectations mismatch is one of the biggest reasons why volunteers suddenly just realize, oh, this is not for me. But then sometimes they're too shy to say it, or too paiseh, or they feel too bad to say it. Yeah, so we try to establish a contact, try to find out why, and if it's something that we can fix, for example, something we can improve on, that'd be great. If it's like something like no interest, or they just really don't have time anymore, then we will make sure that we facilitate the exit as soon as possible, and to give them a very enjoyable and smooth offboarding experience, and also keep in touch with them even after they have left. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the part about offboarding is definitely very important, so that even if like right now it's not the season for them to volunteer, maybe down the line in the future they can come back when they're freer.
Definitely. We always extend the invitation, especially because sometimes during exam periods, then they realize, oh no, I don't have time now. But then after the exam, they might have a few months, for example after A-levels, etc. And then we're like, hey, the spot is still open. If you have the heart to serve, you want to come back, we welcome you back anytime. If not, keep in touch. Make sure you're doing okay. Any celebrations you have, share with us. We want to celebrate it with you as well. Yeah.
Thanks. And we're going to move on to the final section of this first half structured Q&A, which is about assessing and reviewing our volunteer engagement. So, to add on, Itang, like in your context, how do you assess the effectiveness of your volunteer engagements? Like, how do you know that volunteers are engaged, or that I guess you're doing a good job?
I think when we do assessment of the effectiveness of volunteer engagement, firstly, we look at feedback. We always like to do a lot of feedback loops. We always like to ask for feedback. There's a lot of terms for it, right? What 360 feedback, feedback forms, etc. I personally prefer to get feedback through verbal communications, either face-to-face or through a call, and to really understand various aspects of the voluntary experience. For example, is information easy to access? How is your leader? How's the engagement in the your team, the department? How do you feel like you're purposeful doing the work that you do here? Do you feel like you're making an impact? Is it too heavy on your workload? And a lot of questions like that. Yeah, and sometimes when that doesn't work, because some people are more shy, we use Google Forms, right? Because then it's fully anonymous. They're able to really be super transparent, and we take in this feedback and we use that as a form of measurement to see if our volunteers are enjoying their time here, if there's areas that we can improve in, certain pointers that we can learn from other organizations as well, and to see how we can really improve their volunteer engagement experience. Yeah, so sometimes which method is chosen really depends on the person you're speaking to and also the kind of feedback you're getting. Of course, you're trying to get something more critical. Sometimes most people would generally prefer anonymous form, or if they're more comfortable, they prefer a more face-to-face conversation, etc. Yeah, so instead of saying things are perfect, instead of saying things are completely flawless, these various avenues, if applied correctly, can really help open up the very small cracks. Well, hopefully they're small cracks in the volunteer engagement experience that we can hopefully patch up and work on as well. Yeah.
Very detailed and very comprehensive. About all the different aspects of the experience. Victor, what about in your context? How do you assess the effectiveness of volunteer engagement?
So over at our end, we will try to look for a benchmark. Yeah, so I think in the past, NVPC do publish some of the reports, we'll observe some of the data, and then not just NVPC, but also NCSS. Yeah, so we will try to see whether there's a benchmark that we can strive towards. Of course, if there's nothing in a local context, then maybe we have to look at overseas, whether some of the data is it applicable. And in order to do that, we also have collect volunteer feedbacks on an annual basis. Yeah, so from there you will know whether the volunteers understand their roles. We ask questions like, whether my work with Touch makes a positive impact, and whether they understand their role as a volunteer. If they do not, then that means that we will need to look at how do we do our orientation or even training of the volunteers. And of course, we also ask how likely are you to recommend, Touch to other volunteers. So that will give you a rough data, where you are heading in terms of your volunteer satisfaction with the organizations. Of course, we also look at the volunteering hours. Like for example, I remember in the past there is hourly rate being equated to volunteering hours. Yeah, so actually sometimes for the management in the organizations, if you are able to mention that, actually there's a cost saving. If let's say you don't have these volunteers who clock, for example, 100 hours, which is equivalent to, let's say, $20, that will be like 2,000. Actually, you have a cost saving of about $2,000. Yeah, so that kind of like explain to the management also that it is important that it is not just about cost saving, but if your mission is really about building a caring generation, then it is important that the volunteering work must achieve some form of objective that is meaningful for the volunteers. And then when they come on board with us, I think this one, especially for the youth, we do see that they journey with us for like 5 to 10 years. And this is the part where we actually have a roadmap. Yeah, because after a while, after a few years, you probably know that there are some who can take up leadership role. And that is where you ask them whether they would like to take up leadership role, and then that's how you groom them so that you can grow your pool of volunteers. Because we all know that we have limited resources in an NPO, and volunteers do play a critical part in terms of our service deliveries, and also helping us to ensure that our clients are being taken care of. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Victor. Megan, is there anything else you would like to add on about how you assess and review the engagement of volunteers at Prudential Singapore?
We employ a variety of methods. Impact assessment is a key part of all our programs. So pre and post intervention, we carry out, impact assessment in the form of feedback, where we ask not just the impact assessments are focused on the beneficiaries, right? But then we also conduct our own feedback with the volunteers. I think that just this point on feedback is that it goes in many ways. So you can review a volunteer's performance. The beneficiary can provide insight into how beneficial the intervention was for them. The volunteer and the beneficiary as well can provide feedback on our performance as an organizer in how effective we were in putting a program together. So it really, works in that 360 way. Yeah, I think, other points have already been made. I'll just emphasize the importance of doing this, because lots of times, we focus so much on the front part of the volunteer intervention without really, looking at the feedback and the wrap up. And this is important because it then sets the tone for the next intervention that you have, right? So that you're able to take back the learnings from what everybody has shared. So yeah, I just think that every program that you run needs to be followed with, needs to have this pre followed by a post.
Thanks, Megan. I think that nicely takes us to the end of our structured Q&A section. Now we're going to move on to the open Q&A. There's a lot of questions in the chat that are going on. So at this point, if you have any questions you would like to address to the speakers, please feel free to ask them. To the speakers, we've kind of compiled these questions in the WhatsApp chat already, so you can also go there to see where they are, because there's a lot of discussion happening in the chat. So I think the first question from Quince, and this question is to Victor, about how does the size and scale of the project impact your volunteer engagement strategies?
Okay, all right. So definitely, the size of the project will definitely has a certain form of impact. So right now, I just want to share that. Okay, so the first step is actually the event space, meaning that in the past pre-COVID days, we used to run this Touch Giving Festival. So when we know that we're going to organize this Touch Giving Festival, we will list down the various roles that the volunteers can perform, and then we also start to chat with my colleagues, because the various committee will probably need X number of volunteers. So from there, then we decide, this is the total numbers of volunteers that we are required. So like, for example, if let's say we have a run, you need about 20 road marshals. So definitely you need to look at, the total number of volunteers you require. And then you look at what are the, apart from posting your recruitment online, what are other stakeholders that you can reach out to volunteer. Yeah, so like, for example, we have students group, schools, or even corporates who don't mind volunteers for our events. Yeah, so this is one part. When we talk about planning an event, you need to craft out the numbers of roles and the number of volunteers you need. So that will definitely impact how you engage the volunteers. So of course, you have 200 volunteers. When they come for your events, you need to brief them. You can't do this on the actual day, yeah, because it can be quite messy. So what we did was that before the actual events, we'll have a volunteer briefing for everyone at a centralized locations where everybody gather. Now, if let's say we are going to do this, you don't have to gather everybody. You can do it online, which is quite convenient. All right. The other one is about growing your presence. Yeah. So, like, for example, we do know that every town definitely there's a need, or rather there's a need of tuitions, especially for those children from low-income family. Yeah, so currently we actually have 20 clubs island-wide, and how we actually grow them is that before we even start to grow, I'm very thankful that before I joined, some of my colleagues already do the volunteer roadmap. So as a volunteer, you come in, then you can be a volunteer leader and then club supervisor. So already they have in mind to build a structure. Yeah, so that when you move to another locations, when you grow, right, some of the volunteers from this location or this club, they once you groom them, they are ready to be the club leader or club supervisor for another location, and that is how we grow them. Yeah, so I guess it is important to look at the needs of your organizations or the service or the programs, and then you map out the volunteer needs. Yeah, and of course, you also need to know where to tap on the resources. I also want to do a shout out for the SG Cares, the local volunteer center. So currently, there are 24 towns. I think they have appointed almost all. So within the town, there is this LVC that will coordinate the volunteering effort, volunteering work. So that is something that we can also partner them. Yeah.
Thanks, Victor. There's a lot of questions in the chat going on, so feel free to take a look at the questions. This question is for Terng, kind of related more, I think, for small ground-up organizations. How do you develop the capacity of volunteers in small contexts where you may not have the resources to do so?
Okay, I think this is something that I was thinking about for very long, until now as well. So regarding capability development, when we're limited by resources and budget, right? I think it's important to think out of the box and also to look at other kind of avenues and methods that may be simple, may not be very, very conventional, like your typical workshops or your typical courses, but yet they are also effective in their own ways. So some methods that I've tried, I mean, it might work, might not work, depending on the context and the situation. For example, first thing, I think most importantly, is to ensure that volunteers are placed in a position where they are doing work that is meaningful to them, also challenges them as people to grow and to hone the skills that they are using, or to grow them, to help them with self-development. Yeah. And of course, if we cannot spend a lot of money on expensive courses and workshops, sometimes we can form partnerships with other organizations. What I noticed is that there's a lot of companies that are actually very, very nice, very, very willing to help, and they can also share knowledge that they have learned, knowledge that they know, knowledge that they have gained from their various experiences with the volunteers as well. So this also ties into encouraging your volunteers to attend free events as well. For example, like this NVPC event, and other workshops hosted by organizations like Youth Corps, National Youth Council, etc. That might be meaningful and might be beneficial as well. Yeah, and should that not be available, there's always the option of having internal knowledge sharing sessions between your own volunteers. Because I think at YouthHarmony, we're quite fortunate to have very diverse backgrounds, right? So everyone has different experiences, different skill sets. And I think due to this diversity, they're able to really share the knowledge that they have with other volunteers, other youths, and also have other youths to learn from as well. Yeah, so I think all these are certain avenues you can try that are not too resource intensive, and it could potentially still be quite effective as well. So I think most important thing is to put in the effort to figure out what works and what doesn't, and to ideate new solutions that may not be very conventional but can be effective as well.
Yeah, I think like when you don't have resources, that's really when you can just get as creative about finding ways around it. And sometimes not having the resources opens up more opportunities because people are also willing to share when you really don't, when you really like, yeah. Megan, there's a ton of questions for you in the chat, so I'm just gonna consolidate them. Firstly, about the matchmaking process, like do you have any tips on how your organization tries to coordinate like the right match? Because it sounds like it's very, it requires quite a lot of resources or headcount to coordinate that and to do the screening versus the turning away volunteers who are not the right fit. So I guess firstly around like, how do you facilitate the matchmaking process at Prudential? And then secondly, some questions about selecting or working with NGOs. What's that process like? And how do you decide on who to work with?
Okay, thank you for the questions. I think they're lovely questions, especially the one on how do you, find the right nonprofits to work with. In fact, I thought that one deserves a session in itself. So Grace, it's a conversation that I think we can all talk about for hours and hours. But let me answer the first question first. On matchmaking. First of all, I think I'm very blessed to be part of an organization that values CSR and community work so much that we have a dedicated team to just do this full time. So yes, that in a way, we have the time and the resources to design community programs and then recruit the volunteers for them and maintain this cadence throughout the year after year. Now, if you don't have that, and you say you're part of a smaller outfit that is still very passionate about CSR, and you're relying on the efforts of your volunteer community to organize these events for other volunteers, it can still be done. Matchmaking for us is very simple because we have flagship programs, right? So each program is very unique and it looks at a different beneficiary group. So you have programs for seniors, we have programs for children, and then we have two causes, health and financial literacy. And then the way the programs are designed, the volunteer element is such that some require intensive training for a volunteer to be then able to go out and volunteer. And then some are no training or very little training, like a briefing will suffice, right? So when you explain what the program is about to a potential volunteer, you're also letting him or her know that this is the JD, this is the time commitment, this is the skills requirement. Do you have the time to commit? Do you have the skills to offer? Or do you have the time to commit to build the skills to then offer? Right? So and I think that's why the point around investing in knowing your audience and investing in knowing your volunteer is so important, because only when you have done that will you be able to matchmake clearly. So first, have a very clear idea of what your program is and what are the requirements from a volunteer, and then have a very clear idea of who your volunteer is and what can they offer. And then it becomes very simple after that. On the other question, the bigger question on how do we decide who we want to work with, we work with a few partners in a few areas, and these are causes that matter to who we are as a company. So, our purpose, in fact, is to help people get the most out of life, and we realize this purpose at Prudential by helping people to improve their health and well-being. So naturally, our community programs, they also follow the same philosophy. They are aimed at helping our community live better. And when I say live better, it's not just your physical fitness, but it's well-being in other forms, right? Financial well-being, to be able to age productively. So we have very clearly defined interest areas or causes that we support, and that reflects who we are as a company and the kind of impact that we want to make in society. And then when you are very clear about these are the topics that matter to us, then it's about just going and finding the partners who again are the best fit for you. So yeah, we can have a session about this someday.
Thanks, Megan. That was very comprehensive.
Grace,
yes.
Benjamin here from PSA.
Yeah.
I just got a question for Megan, if I may. Just a very interesting point that she raised up earlier. Megan, very good work. It sounds like Prudential has a very well thought out framework and well developed framework in terms of CSR. Thanks for sharing. I think we learned a lot of useful tips and things that we can consider as well. I just got a question. I think it's more organizational related question. So I guess what you mentioned, what you shared earlier, also requires, like you mentioned, time and resources to filter down the volunteers to cater to sort of the specific trainings that they need. And you mentioned a couple of flagship programs that Prudential has on elder care and children and all that. So I mean, just wondering, is there a dedicated CSR team in Prudential that runs this, and is that the only function that the team does? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I mean, I'm very fortunate to be part of a company that values CSR so much that they have a dedicated team. So we're actually a 4-member team that works on CSR full-time. We call our CSR community investment and partnerships. So it's CSR is a more popularly known term in the industry. We go by a different name, but essentially we do the same work. And it's work that we devote 100% of our time to.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Megan. The next question is for Victor. So 2 questions in one. The first one is it's from Ben, kind of about like offboarding inactive volunteers. Like why do we have to offboard them rather than just like leave them in the volunteer pool? And the other question from Shami about long service volunteers. How do we work with long-term volunteers as a new staff?
Okay, so I answer Ben's question first. Actually, in the past, we do keep volunteers' information, even though they are inactive. However, because of the PDPA guideline, if they do not allow us to keep their information, then definitely we got to, erase them. Once that relationship, volunteering relationship with the organization is no longer there, so that's why we cannot keep their information or even data unless they give us that. That's why now we are trying to do it on an annual basis, where we will send the info link to the volunteers, whether we observe that you have been inactive, would you like to continue with us? If not, we will erase their data. So as part of the PDPA guideline, so these are the things. But if they do allow us, then we will continue to update them about the volunteering opportunity, so that when they are able to come back, they can just join us. All right. Then the second question is about the long service volunteers. My encouragement to you is that you need to press on. You need to make friends with them. Actually, I do have such experience in the past. And how do you win them over is you need to walk the talk, and you need to be a role model. And basically, you need to work together with them. And that's how you actually win them over. How long will it take? It depends on individual as well. So for some, it may take one whole year before they know you, before they understand you, and then most likely they will support you. So my encouragement to you is that just press on. Eventually, when they know your heart, they will continue to support you, and that's how you win them over.
Thanks, Victor. Due to just taking note of time, this will be the last question from the ground. And then afterwards, we'll invite the speakers to share their closing thoughts, final takeaways, and then we're going to move on into the bigger room. So this last question is from Yuti, and it's for a newly established organization or community group. What are some tips for establishing concrete volunteer recruitment channels? Like, how do you go beyond the initial volunteer pool of like friends of organizers?
Okay, so I'll take these questions. So first, you can actually publish the volunteer recruitment on your own portal. All right. If that doesn't, if the take-up rate is low, then the other options is tap on giving.sg platform. I think you can use that. You can use that platforms to recruit volunteer. Then the third options for you is to look at where is the location of your center, and then look at the community partners that you can reach out to, be it the schools, religious organizations. As I mentioned earlier on, you can also reach out to the volunteer centers that is within your town. They will be able to support you.
Thanks, Victor. And thanks so much to all our panelists. Now we're going to move on to closing remarks / last takeaways. What would you like to leave our audience with tonight, Megan?
Maybe on a more tactical, level, I would say try to create an experience and not just an event. Sometimes as organizers, we do this day in and day out, and it becomes at some point a little bit mundane. It happens to everyone, right? But for that person who is showing up that day, it could be his first volunteering opportunity. Let it not be his or her last, right? So make it an experience show them what they're doing, show them the impact of what they're doing, right? Always tell them what this work leads up to, give them the big picture, give them the context, right? So really make it an experience. And then something else I would say for all the people here, and because I've been looking at the questions on the chat, and there's a lot of people who are just starting up, right? Or coming from small organizations where you are strapped for resources, you're strapped for budgets. Don't think that, you have to do something big, right? Everybody starts small, right? Your volunteering community does not have to run into the hundreds, right? You have 5 passionate volunteers, it's great. So be okay with starting small, be okay with, coming up with events that are at a smaller scale. It does not have to be big bang and have all the bells and whistles. It's all right, because at the end of the day, we're all here to do good, right? And even the smallest act can have the biggest consequences. So yeah, just leaving you all on a slightly more inspirational note there.
Thank you so much, Megan. Victor?
Yeah, so I'm speaking from an NPO perspective. As you know, we always need, not just my organization needs volunteers, but I think the entire sectors do need volunteers. And it is also important to manage expectation as well as relationship for various stakeholders. And I always encourage, especially my new colleagues who take on the volunteer management portfolio, is to let us consider how we may encourage one another to do good. So that in the process, we may build a network of support, not just for our clients, because even for the volunteer themselves, you may not know that, through volunteering, many friendships are being formed. In fact, we also see some volunteers got attached through volunteering. So I guess it is important to make the whole volunteering experiences enjoyable experience for everyone, so that we can continue to promote, not just volunteerism, but also a caring society. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Victor. And lastly, Itang.
For me, I'll keep it short. I only have three very short points. Firstly is to create an end-to-end experience with consistent engagement, at various activities, various events. Secondly is to be intentional. And for me personally, I like to always remember to serve my volunteers as well. And lastly, to regularly gather feedback and to make sure we act on that feedback based on what insights we're able to gain and what areas of improvement we're able to get. Yeah, so 3 very simple points.
Thanks so much, Itang. I think you just did a good summary of the whole session. I don't need to do a summary anymore. Now we're gonna move into the next section, which is actually the breakout rooms. So I'm going to share my screen and share a bit more about what's going to happen next. So now we're going to go into the breakout rooms for about less than 30 minutes, and that will take us to 8:50. And this is really a time for you to get to know the other people in this call today, and also for you to digest the past hour and 10 minutes of really enriching discussions and insights from Victor, Itang, and Megan. So we're going to go into the breakout room and just debrief and digest. But before we do that, we're going to take a group photo. So at this point, please